This belongs to the man who stopped looking at sunsets. The little girl's voice barely carried above the rain, but it was enough to make Nathaniel Whitmore stop halfway down the marble staircase. Around him, guests in black coats and diamond earrings continued leaving the gala, laughing beneath the warm glow of the mansion lights. But the billionaire no longer heard them. He was staring at the piece of wet cardboard trembling in the child's hands. And for the first time in 12 years, someone had written his daughter's name where he could see it. An hour earlier, Whitmore Estate had been loud with champagne glasses, string music, and the polished smiles of people who donated large checks in front of cameras. Now the ballroom behind Nathaniel was emptying into silence. Staff moved quietly through the enormous house collecting abandoned wine glasses and folded napkins while rain tapped softly against the tall windows overlooking the grounds. The scent of expensive perfume still lingered faintly in the hallway near the front entrance, mixing strangely with the smell of extinguished candles and wet stone drifting in each time the doors opened. Nathaniel loosened his cufflinks as he descended the front steps. 52 years old, worth billions, owner of Whitmore Technologies. A man who had spent the last decade rebuilding his public image into something untouchable. Powerful, controlled, safe. But there were still certain names no one in this house spoke aloud anymore. Lila was one of them. A black SUV pulled away from the circular driveway as another guest thanked him for the evening. Nathaniel nodded automatically, barely listening. Then he saw movement beyond the iron gates. A little girl stood outside in the rain beneath the porch security light. Small, thin, her braids damp against her coat. She could not have been older than 8. One of the guards moved toward her immediately. "You can't stand here," the man called out. "Private property." But the girl didn't move. She lifted the cardboard sign higher with both hands like it weighed more than she did. "Please help find Lila Whitmore." Nathaniel's body went completely still. Behind him, someone dropped a tray. The sharp clang echoed through the entrance hall. Edgar, the longtime estate manager, appeared at the doorway almost instantly. Nathaniel noticed something strange then. Edgar did not look at the child first. He looked at the sign, and for half a second, the older man's face lost all color. "Sir," Edgar said quickly, stepping forward, "I'll handle this." The little girl's eyes shifted toward Nathaniel, not afraid exactly, but cautious, like a child who had already learned adults only listened for a few seconds before deciding whether you mattered. Rainwater dripped from the edge of her sleeves onto the stone driveway. Nathaniel descended another step slowly. "What did you say?" he asked. The girl swallowed once. "A woman told me to bring this here," she said softly. "She said it belongs to the man who stopped looking at sunsets." Something cold moved through Nathaniel's chest. 12 years ago, Elena had said those exact words to him after Lila disappeared at Silverpine Lake. He had never repeated them to anyone. Edgar stepped closer to the gate too quickly. "Sir, this is obviously some kind of setup." But Nathaniel wasn't looking at Edgar anymore. His eyes had fallen to the bottom right corner of the cardboard sign. There, barely visible beneath the rain stains, was a tiny blue drawing of a sun. Uneven rays, crooked circle, childish lines. Nathaniel felt the blood drain slowly from his face. Because Lila had drawn that same blue sun on everything she touched. And almost no one alive still knew that. Nathaniel kept staring at the crooked blue sun as rainwater slid slowly down the cardboard and dripped onto the stone beneath the gate. For a few seconds, no one moved. The guards looked uncertain now, waiting for instructions that did not come. Edgar recovered first. "Sir," he said quietly, stepping closer. "The child is freezing. Let me take the sign and have someone call social services." The little girl tightened her grip immediately. Small fingers, chapped knuckles, instinctive distrust. Nathaniel noticed that before he noticed anything else. "No," she said softly. "I was told not to let house people touch it." The sentence landed strangely in the cold. Night air. Not aggressive, not loud, but precise. Edgar's jaw shifted almost invisibly. Behind Nathaniel, the massive front doors of Whitmore Estate remained partly open, warm golden light spilling across the wet marble steps while staff pretended not to stare. Somewhere deeper inside the mansion, silverware clinked faintly as the catering team cleaned up after the gala. Normal sounds, expensive sounds, but the atmosphere near the gate had turned painfully thin. Nathaniel descended the final step. Up close, the child looked even smaller than he first thought. 8 years old, maybe 9. Her sneakers were soaked through. One lace had snapped and been retied into a knot. Raindrops clung to her eyelashes, but she never wiped them away. "What's your name?" Nathaniel asked. "Amara. Last name, Brooks." He nodded once. "Who gave you this sign, Amara?" The girl hesitated for the first time. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the long driveway behind her, toward the dark road beyond the estate gates, as if checking whether someone had followed her. "A woman near the train station," she said. "She was sick." Vanessa appeared in the doorway then, wrapping a cream-colored coat tighter around herself. Even from a distance, Nathaniel caught the sharp scent of her perfume drifting through the damp air. Expensive jasmine. Familiar. Controlled. "Nathaniel," she said carefully. "This is getting inappropriate. Someone clearly used that child." Amara looked at Vanessa only once. Then she lowered the cardboard sign slightly and said something very small. "You smell like her coat." Silence. Vanessa blinked. "Excuse me?" Nathaniel turned slowly toward Amara. "What do you mean?" The girl swallowed. "The lady at the station," she said. "Her blanket smelled the same." Vanessa gave a short laugh too quickly. "That perfume is sold everywhere." But Nathaniel noticed her hand move unconsciously toward her sleeve after she said it. Tiny gesture. Barely anything. Yet suddenly he remembered another detail. Earlier that evening, when Vanessa had arrived at the gala, her coat had been damp around the cuffs despite the rain not starting until nearly an hour later. Edgar stepped forward again, smoother this time. "Sir." The child probably smelled perfume at the station because people travel through there constantly. Nathaniel did not answer. Instead, he looked past Amara toward the security camera mounted beside the gate. A small blinking red light reflected against the rain. "How long has she been standing here?" he asked quietly. One of the guards cleared his throat. "About 20 minutes, sir." Nathaniel frowned slightly. "Then why wasn't I informed?" The guard hesitated. Edgar answered instead. There was a temporary interruption in the front gate feed. Nathaniel looked at him. Interruption? Only for a few minutes. Something shifted behind Nathaniel's eyes then. Not belief. Not yet. But attention. The dangerous kind. Amara slowly turned the cardboard sign around in her hands. The backside was stained darker from the rain, the tape along the edges beginning to peel loose. "The woman told me to make sure he reads the other side too," she whispered. Nathaniel reached for the sign carefully this time, and as the wet tape lifted under his fingers, he realized something had once been attached to the back of the cardboard recently enough for the paper underneath to still be dry. The edge of the cardboard tore slightly as Nathaniel lifted the back flap, exposing a second layer taped beneath it. Not paper, not cardboard, something older. A folded document, laminated against moisture, hidden with careful pressure, as if someone had intended it to survive rain, time, and suspicion. Edgar stepped forward immediately. "Sir, you don't need to open that here." His voice was steady, but too fast. Vanessa appeared beside him now, her heels clicking sharply against wet stone. "Nathaniel, this is exactly how these situations escalate. It's staged." But Nathaniel had already peeled the edge free. The moment the plastic sleeve came into view, Amara took a small step back, hugging herself against the cold. "She said not to let them stop you," she whispered. Nathaniel paused. "She?" The girl nodded once. "The woman from the station." He slid the document out carefully. A hospital transport form, yellowed at the edges, stamped with Silverpine County Emergency Services. Time of incident, 9:42 p.m. Patient, LW condition. Transferred, not deceased. Nathaniel's hand froze mid-air. Behind him, the mansion felt suddenly too far away, as if the world had tilted 1 degree off balance. Edgar exhaled sharply. That's not, sir. Those records are outdated or misfiled. Vanessa reached for the paper. Let me see that. Nathaniel pulled it back instantly. Not violently, but decisively. His eyes scanned the line again. Transferred, not deceased. Amara watched his face closely now, her voice smaller but steady. She told me that was the part they always ignore first. A faint sound of glass clinking came from inside the house as staff continued clearing the gala remnants. Normal life continuing just steps away from collapse. Nathaniel didn't look up. Who wrote this? He asked. Edgar hesitated just long enough to betray himself. Medical staff change records all the time during emergencies. You know that. But his tone lacked certainty now. Amara reached into her pocket again. This time she pulled out something even smaller. A folded, softened bus receipt. Ink smudged but still legible. She gave me this too, she said. Nathaniel took it without thinking. Route number. Timestamp. Same night as Silverpine. Same hour. But the destination line had been manually crossed out and rewritten in a different hand. Private transfer, Whitmore Medical Fund. Vanessa stiffened. That's impossible. Edgar's eyes flicked toward her for a fraction of a second too long. Nathaniel noticed. He always noticed patterns before people did. Amara shifted her weight slightly, as if unsure whether she was allowed to continue speaking. The woman said the buses didn't take her where they said they did, she added. She said they changed the paper after. Nathaniel looked up slowly. Who changed it? No one answered. The silence became heavier than the rain. Then Edgar spoke again, softer this time. Sir, this child has been exposed to too many outside influences. People use children like this to create confusion around wealthy families. But Amara suddenly shook her head. No, she said quickly. She said your house already knew. The words landed wrong in the air. Too precise. Too targeted. Vanessa turned sharply. Enough. This is manipulation. But Nathaniel noticed something else now. Amara was not looking at Vanessa. She was looking at Edgar. And her hands were trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from remembering something she had been trying not to say. The man at the station, she said quietly. He wore a ring with a black stone, like yours. She pointed not at Nathaniel, but at Edgar's hand. Edgar instinctively hid it behind his back. Too late. Nathaniel saw it. A heavy ring. Black onyx. The same kind listed in internal Whitmore Estate staff records, issued only to high-level security supervisors assigned to restricted transport routes. Edgar cleared his throat. It's a standard company ring. Many departments use similar designs. But his voice had shifted now. Slightly higher. Slightly tighter. Amara stepped back another half-step, clutching the torn cardboard still in her hands. She said if I showed it to the wrong person, she whispered, they would take it away before anyone believed me. Nathaniel stared at her. Take what away? Amara hesitated. Then she looked down at the cardboard sign, at the faint outline where something had been peeled off the back. This, she said softly. There was more on it before I came here. And that was when Nathaniel noticed the missing shape in the tape. Something rectangular had once been attached there, removed recently enough that the fibers of the cardboard were still disturbed, like something important had been deliberately cut away before he ever saw it. The moment Edgar spoke, the temperature in the entrance hall seemed to drop another degree. Sir, I strongly recommend we move this conversation inside, he said. His tone now carefully measured, professional again, as if resetting control over the room. 2 security guards had already stepped closer without being asked. Not aggressive, but positioned. Subtle angles forming a quiet barrier between Amara and Nathaniel. Vanessa followed them, her voice calm, practiced, almost sympathetic. This child has clearly been coached. Look at her. She's freezing, she's exhausted. Someone is using her to destabilize you. Emotionally. Amara tightened her grip on the cardboard fragments, the laminated hospital document now half visible in Nathaniel's hand. She didn't move backward, even as the space around her shrank. The mansion's open doorway behind Nathaniel spilled warm golden light, but none of it reached her anymore. She stood in the cold boundary where wealth ended and reality was being questioned. "I'm not destabilizing anything," Amara said quietly. Her voice was small, but clean, like a line drawn carefully on paper. "I was told to deliver what you stopped looking for." One of the security guards exhaled softly. Not unkindly, just tired. "Sweetheart," he said, "why don't you come with us? We'll get you warm, find your mom. Okay?" Amara shook her head once. "I already found who I was told to find." Edgar stepped forward slightly, hands open in a calming gesture. "Mr. Whitmore, this is exactly the kind of misinformation we need to contain before it spreads. If this document is authentic, it could be part of a wider fraud attempt." His words were reasonable, controlled, the kind of language used in boardrooms and legal briefings. But Nathaniel didn't look at him. He was still reading the transport form, eyes locked on the stamped line. "Transfer completed, Whitmore Medical Fund Oversight Unit." Vanessa noticed his silence and softened her voice further, placing a hand lightly on his arm. "Nathaniel, please. You're reacting to coincidence. We can have legal review this tomorrow with proper documentation." Amara looked up at Vanessa then, not accusing, just observing. "The woman said you would speak like that," she said. Vanessa's smile held, but only just. "Excuse me?" Amara continued. "She said the people inside the big house always say legal review when they don't want the truth today." The words settled in the air too precisely for comfort. One of the guards shifted his stance, suddenly unsure. A charity coordinator who had been lingering near the steps approached carefully, adjusting her clipboard. "Mr. Whitmore," she said gently, "we should not be having this conversation at the entrance. There are guests still leaving, and this is becoming disruptive." Again, polite. Again, controlled. But the meaning was clear. This did not belong here. Amara was not meant to be here. The world of polished stone and soft lighting was already correcting itself around her presence. She became smaller without anyone touching her. Nathaniel finally lowered the document slightly. "Let her finish speaking," he said quietly. The coordinator hesitated. "Sir, with respect, she is a minor standing outside in the rain presenting unverified materials. We have protocols for this." Amara took a small step forward, just enough to reach the threshold of the doorway. The warmth from inside touched her face for a moment, then disappeared as a guard subtly repositioned himself. She did not flinch. "I'm not here for protocols," she said. "I'm here because she said if I didn't come, nobody would ever ask why the paper changed." Pause followed. In that pause, Nathaniel looked at her differently. Not as a problem, not yet as truth, but as something persistent, something that did not break under dismissal. Edgar's voice lowered further. "Sir, if this continues, we may need to involve legal counsel to prevent any misunderstandings from escalating." That was when Amara did something no one expected. She placed the broken cardboard carefully on the wet stone step, turned it over fully, and pointed to a faint second impression pressed into the fibers beneath the tape. Numbers partially erased but still visible under the rain light. "She said you would recognize this part," Amara whispered. Nathaniel leaned slightly closer for the first time, eyes narrowing. And in that moment, Edgar moved just a fraction too quickly toward the sign, as if to block Nathaniel's view, revealing, unintentionally, that he already knew exactly what those numbers meant. Nathaniel didn't speak for a long time. The numbers pressed into the cardboard beneath the torn tape seemed to pull his attention deeper the longer he stared at them, like they were not just ink but something remembered. Edgar shifted his weight slightly beside him. "Sir, this is turning into speculation," he said carefully. "Whatever that is, it's not evidence of anything concrete." But Nathaniel didn't respond. His eyes were no longer on Edgar. They were on Amara. The girl stood very still now, rainwater dripping from the edge of her sleeve onto the stone step where she had placed the sign. She reached into her coat pocket and, after a moment of hesitation, pulled out something wrapped in a thin plastic sleeve. "She said to only show this if they tried to take the first thing away," Amara said quietly. Vanessa exhaled through her nose, already tired of the escalation. Nathaniel, please don't let this continue. But Nathaniel had already taken the item from the girl's hands. It was a hospital bracelet. White plastic, slightly discolored at the edges, tightened with a worn adhesive clasp. His thumb brushed over the printed text. The room behind him seemed to mute slightly as he read. Patient, Lila Whitmore. Date, October 14th. Year, the year after her supposed death. Nathaniel's hand stopped moving. The bracelet didn't fall. It simply stayed suspended between his fingers as if his grip had forgotten how to release it. Edgar's voice came again, quieter this time. Sir, those tags are frequently reused in. He stopped mid-sentence. Because Nathaniel had turned it slightly. There was another line printed underneath, faint but legible. Transfer authorization. Silverpine Recovery Unit, restricted custody. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice sharper now. This is fabricated. Hospital bracelets don't work like that. But Nathaniel was no longer listening. His mind had gone somewhere else, somewhere colder. A memory surfaced without warning. A late-night call 12 years ago, static heavy. A hospital nurse insisting a transfer had been handled privately under executive instruction. He remembered signing something without reading it fully. He remembered trusting Edgar when he said it was standard procedure for sensitive cases. His fingers tightened around the plastic band. Edgar, Nathaniel said finally, his voice lower than before. Not angry, not yet, just altered. Edgar straightened slightly. Yes, sir? Nathaniel held the bracelet up between them. Why does this have a restricted custody transfer code on it? The question hung in the air too long. Long enough for Amara to shift, her weight slightly as if bracing. Long enough for Vanessa to stop speaking entirely. Edgar's expression remained controlled, but something behind it tightened. Sir, those codes are part of outdated medical record formatting. They're not reliable indicators of... Answer the question. Nathaniel interrupted quietly. The calm in his voice was worse than anger. A soft crack in something built too carefully. Edgar looked at the bracelet again, then away, just for a fraction of a second. That fraction was enough. Amara stepped forward slightly, as if she had been waiting for this moment. She said he would try to explain it away first, she whispered. Then he would stop looking at it. Nathaniel turned his gaze back to her slowly. Who is he? Amara? The girl didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her pocket again and pulled out a small folded paper, damp at the edges but protected inside a second plastic layer. She didn't hand it to Edgar. She didn't offer it to Vanessa. She placed it directly into Nathaniel's palm. She said you would remember the signature, Amara said softly. Nathaniel unfolded it. At first, it looked like any old authorization form, formal letterhead, stamped seal, inked signatures. But then his eyes stopped, because at the bottom of the page, beneath his own signature from 12 years ago, was another name he had not seen in over a decade. A name listed as witness approval. Edgar Calloway. The world didn't change immediately. It simply went very still. Nathaniel read it once, then again. His hand didn't shake, but the air around him felt like it had shifted away from solid ground. Slowly, he lifted his eyes, not to Amara this time, but to Edgar. And for the first time that night, Edgar did not meet his gaze. Nathaniel didn't move for several seconds after reading Edgar's name. The sound of rain against the mansion windows became clearer again, like the world was slowly returning to normal volume after something had shattered inside it. Behind him, Vanessa stepped closer, her voice soft but precise. Nathaniel, you're letting a child's materials manipulate a very serious situation. Edgar finally spoke again, carefully, measured. Sir, I can explain that signature. There are administrative processes, legacy systems. Nathaniel raised one hand slightly, not to silence him, just to pause him, and Edgar stopped. That small pause changed everything in the room. Nathaniel lowered his gaze back to the document, then to the hospital bracelet still in his other hand. Two objects, two timelines, one impossible contradiction. He exhaled slowly, then did something no one in the room expected. He turned away from both Edgar and Vanessa and walked back inside the mansion. Not fast, not emotional, controlled. The guards instinctively stepped aside. Amara hesitated at the threshold. Nathaniel stopped just long enough to glance back at her. "Come inside," he said quietly. Not a command, not a question, just a decision made. The warmth of the mansion wrapped around them as they entered, but it felt different now. Less like comfort, more like concealment. Nathaniel led them past the main hall, past lingering staff pretending not to listen, into a smaller private study lined with dark wood and muted light. He closed the door. The sound was final. For a moment, only the rain outside filled the silence. Then Nathaniel picked up his phone. "David," he said calmly when the line connected. "I need you to pull something for me." His voice was steady, but lower than usual. "Silver Pine County Emergency Records. October 14, 12 years ago. I want all transfer logs, not summaries. Raw data." A pause. "Yes, I'm serious." He ended the call before any more questions could come. Amara stood near the edge of the room, not sitting, not asking, just holding the folded cardboard tighter than before, as if letting go would erase it. Vanessa leaned against the edge of a chair, watching him carefully now. "You're escalating this without legal review," she said gently. "That's not like you." Nathaniel didn't respond. Instead, he opened a drawer in his desk and took out a small black tablet. He turned it on, entered a private secure archive, and began scrolling through old estate records, staff assignments, transport logs, internal medical invoices. Edgar stood near the door, perfectly still now, like a man, waiting for instructions that had not yet arrived. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of electronics and the distant rain. Then Amara spoke, very quietly. She said, "I don't need money," she said. Nathaniel looked up. "What do you need?" he asked. Amara hesitated. Not because she didn't know, because she had already decided it wasn't something adults usually understood. "She said if I bring everything here," Amara said. "My mom stops getting moved around when she gets scared." Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. There was no bargaining in her voice. No expectation. Only condition. Like truth itself was the only payment she recognized. He nodded once, then returned to the tablet. A few minutes later, his expression changed slightly. Not shock, not yet, but recognition. He tapped the screen once, then again pulling up a transport timestamp log. His eyes narrowed. The entry he was looking at showed Edgar's clearance code attached to a Silver Pine transfer request. But the timestamp didn't match what Edgar had previously stated in internal incident reports. It was off by exactly 47 minutes. Nathaniel leaned back slightly in his chair. The rain outside intensified, tapping harder against the glass. The television in a distant kitchen flickered faintly through the walls, some late-night program playing to no one. Vanessa shifted. "What is it?" she asked. Nathaniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he opened a second file. Security logs, gate access history, and there it was again. A gap. 47 minutes of missing footage during the exact transfer window. He stared at it for a long time. Then, very quietly, he said Edgar's name. Not loudly, not angrily, just enough for the room to hear it differently now. Edgar straightened slightly. "Yes, sir?" Nathaniel turned the tablet toward him without standing. "You told me the transfer was handled under standard procedure." Edgar nodded once. "That's correct." Nathaniel tapped the screen. "Then explain the missing 47 minutes in your authorization trail." The silence that followed was heavier than before. Amara looked between them, still holding the cardboard sign, still not speaking. Unless spoken to. Vanessa's posture tightened. Edgar's expression didn't break, but something in his eyes shifted, almost imperceptibly, as if recalculating distance. Nathaniel closed the tablet slowly, not because he had finished, but because he had seen enough for now. He stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the rain washing over the estate grounds. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter than before. "I've trusted the wrong version of this story for a very long time," he said. And without turning around, he added, "And I think I know exactly who built it." Nathaniel did not raise his voice. That was the first thing that made the room feel wrong. Instead, he simply turned away from the window and looked at Edgar as if he were studying a financial report that no longer added up. "Bring the Silverpine transfer log up on the main screen," he said calmly. Edgar didn't move immediately. That delay lasted less than 2 seconds, but it was enough. Vanessa noticed it too. "Nathaniel," she said softly, "this is not something you should be doing in front of—" "In front of who?" he interrupted gently. "No edge, just clarity." The kind of clarity that made people uncomfortable because it didn't leave space for interpretation. Amara stood near the chair, still holding the damp cardboard, watching the room like she was memorizing it rather than participating in it. Edgar finally stepped toward the wall-mounted display and connected his device. The screen lit up with transport logs, timestamps, and authorization entries. Nathaniel walked closer, hands behind his back. "We're going to do something simple," he said. "We're going to replay the record of what happened that night." Edgar's fingers hovered over the controls. "Sir, that data is already verified internally." Nathaniel glanced at him. "Then it won't mind being seen again." A small silence followed. The file opened. Rows of timestamps appeared. Amara suddenly spoke, very quietly. "That's the night she said the lights went out for too long." Nathaniel didn't look at her, but he nodded once, as if registering it. "Play the footage," he said. Edgar hesitated again. Vanessa straightened. "Nathaniel, this is becoming obsessive." But he had already pressed play.
Alodingi con spoon.
Once, twice. The screen flickered. Security camera feed from Silverpine Gate, 9:30 p.m.
Then,
Low visibility. A transport vehicle entering frame. Edgar's hand tightened slightly on the remote. Amara tilted her head. "That's not the right time," she said suddenly. Nathaniel looked at her. "What did you say?" "The lady said it happened after the big bell at the station," Amara replied. "Not before." Edgar forced a small laugh. Children misremember time constantly. But Nathaniel's eyes were now on the timestamp. 9:30 p.m. Then another log line beneath it. System interruption flagged. 47 minutes missing. The room went still again. Not loud silence. Controlled silence. The kind that begins to isolate people. Nathaniel walked closer to the screen. "Scroll forward," he said. Edgar complied. He only said, "Open it." Edgar broke the seal. Inside, transfer authorization copies, original signatures, timestamp alignment reports, and a single internal memo labeled Oversight Review, signed by Edgar Calloway. Edgar froze. The silence that followed wasn't confusion anymore. It was recognition collapsing into itself. Nathaniel watched him carefully, voice still level. "You said you never approved restricted custody transfers." Edgar didn't respond. Not immediately. Not smoothly. His eyes flicked once toward Vanessa, then back to Nathaniel. And in that hesitation, the entire room changed shape. Amara stepped slightly closer to Nathaniel's side without realizing it. Not because she was told to, because she didn't need to stand alone anymore. Edgar saw it. And for the first time that night, he understood he had already lost control of the room without anyone raising their voice. Nathaniel did not sit down. He simply reached for the envelope again, as if distance no longer mattered between him and the truth inside it. The room had changed now. Even the air felt thinner, stripped of its earlier performance of control. Edgar stood perfectly still, his hands no longer moving, no longer explaining. Vanessa had stopped speaking altogether. Amara remained near Nathaniel's side, her small fingers still wrapped around the torn cardboard sign, as if she was afraid the truth might disappear if she let go of anything. Nathaniel opened the final page inside the envelope. It was not another summary, not a report. It was an original transfer authorization chain, stamped and verified at multiple institutional levels, each line tied to a single night at Silverpine. But beneath it was something else. A sealed forensic addendum. He broke the seal without asking permission from anyone in the room. The paper inside was older than the others. He read the first line, then stopped. His expression changed so subtly at first that it was almost invisible. Then everything else followed. His hand lowered slightly, still holding the document, but no longer supporting it. His eyes remained fixed on the page as if it had rewritten the room around him. "This," he said quietly, but the word did not finish cleanly. It broke in the middle. Edgar shifted forward half a step. "Sir, that report was never finalized for public review." Nathaniel raised one finger. Not sharply, just enough. And Edgar stopped speaking. Amara looked up at Nathaniel's face, studying it the way she had studied every adult who had ever tried to decide what she was allowed to know. "What does it say?" she asked softly. Nathaniel didn't answer her immediately. Instead, he placed the forensic addendum on the table, as if it weighed more than paper should. Then he turned it so everyone could see. Vanessa stepped closer first. Her eyes scanned the document quickly, then slowed, then stopped entirely. The color drained from her face in real time, not all at once, but in stages. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." Edgar took a step forward, then another, but stopped when he saw Nathaniel's eyes. Because Nathaniel was no longer looking at him like a colleague, or even like someone he had once trusted. He was looking at him like a missing piece had just been found in the wrong place. The document confirmed what the missing 47 minutes had hidden. A secondary transport authorization had been issued during the blackout window. Signed, approved, executed. Not by a stranger, not by an outside system, but by internal estate oversight. Edgar Calloway. The room didn't explode. It emptied. Of noise, of excuses, of distance. Nathaniel sat down slowly in the chair behind him, as if his body had finally accepted what his mind had been resisting. For a moment he said nothing. No one did. The only sound was the faint hum of the mansion's climate system and the distant rain against glass. Amara stepped closer to the table. Not to the document. To Nathaniel. "She said you would understand when you saw both papers together," she whispered. Nathaniel didn't look up right away. When he did, his voice was lower than before, stripped of everything except certainty. "You authorized a second transfer," he said to Edgar. Edgar's mouth opened slightly, then closed. No explanation came. None was possible now. Vanessa turned her head slowly toward Edgar, as if seeing him for the first time in a different timeline. "You told me it was closed," she said quietly. Not accusation, realization. Edgar finally spoke, but the words lacked structure. It was contained. It was supposed to prevent escalation. Nathaniel stood again, slowly, not aggressively, just inevitably. He placed the forensic addendum back into the envelope and sealed it with a calm precision that felt colder than anger. Then he looked at Edgar for a long moment, not shouting, not breaking, just seeing, for the first time fully, the truth of what had been done, the truth of what had been hidden under layers of procedure and trust and silence. Amara's small voice broke the stillness again. "She said you wouldn't believe it until it couldn't be explained anymore," she said. Nathaniel turned slightly toward her. His expression had changed again, but this time it was not shock. It was recognition of cost. Slowly, he placed the sealed envelope down on the table between them like something final. Then he looked at Edgar, and his voice came out steady, controlled, and impossibly quiet. "Call my attorney."